Hello everybody, my name is Michael Wagner. I teach at the Westphal College of Media Arts and Design at Drexel University in Philadelphia. And on this channel I talk about digital media, game design and spatial audio. Now this video is going to be a little bit different to the videos that I did over the last couple of weeks. I got so many comments and questions that I thought it makes sense to do a question and answer video. So in true YouTube fashion, I'm going to pick a couple of questions that you guys had and I'm going to try to give them my best answer. Let me know if you like it. If you do, I will make more of those. And otherwise, without further ado, let's go to the first question. The first question comes from user Thumbs On in response to one of my first videos on Waves NX. He says, very interesting video. Why do you use Waves NX and not embody Immerse VST or new audio technology spatial audio designer? They should do the same, but you are not limited to Quattro Audio. Are you sponsored by Waves? Now, this question made me smile for a number of reasons. First of all, I'm not sponsored by Waves. I essentially teach the very subjects that I talk about in this video. So to some extent, my employer, which is Drexel University, is sponsoring my activities here. So if I would ever get a commercial sponsor, there would at least be questions. I don't think there would be any issues, but I probably would have to clarify a certain conflict of interest. But if I ever get commercial sponsorship, you would know because I would need to change my introduction. So I could not really talk that much about where I normally work. The reason I put this question here in this video is simply because it made me realize that there's one important point that we try to omit when we're talking about immersive audio or immersive media in general. And that is the fact that immersion is such a buzzword that it is used in different ways. And different companies will advertise their products with the term of providing an immersive experience or being immersive in any way or form, but have different meanings attached to that term of immersion. And what user Sam's On was referring to is that companies like Embody or New Audio Technology use immersion in a slightly different way to the way I was using the term immersion. The type of immersion that I'm interested in is the immersion where I can actually move around, where I can change my position of my head, where I can look into different directions, and the system will provide me with the proper audio into my ears. Now, obviously, there are different ways on how to achieve that type of immersion. The first one is the obvious one. You can set up a fully functional Dolby Atmos or Ambisonics monitoring system with 10, 12, 15, 22, whatever speakers, and therefore create a full sound field within your studio so that you can move around in your freely move around in your studio and get the three-dimensional impression. And this is obviously what the professional studios would do. Now, for us who are on a budget, that's not really possible, or usually not really possible. So we need to do something else. And the other option that we have is that we, instead of having a full reproduction system, try to monitor or track the position of my ears or of the head, and then feed my ears or my head with the proper audio as if I would be in a fully immersive environment. So the key here is that I'm really interested in technologies that are tracking my position. Now, there are really not that many options out there. There are a couple of things that you can do with head-mounted displays, and I might actually go into that in one of the future videos. There's a very interesting company called DearVR that has a couple of really promising technologies. And other than that, there are basically two technologies out there that are commonly used. The one is Waves NX, and for me that's the more consumer-friendly technology, which uses this little head tracking sensor that you put on your headphones, and that can then track your head. The second option that you have is something that comes out of the Pro Tools world, and that is the 360 pen suite from Audio Ease. And that is primarily a plugin that allows you to monitor 360 video. So it's not as much focused on music production as such, but you can actually use it for music production. Now, the 360 pen suite allows you to use a particular head tracking device, which is a low-cost head tracking device. It is this little thingy here. Let me just kind of take that out of the box here. And that's really, really inexpensive. Let me see if I can get that. Yeah, here we are. That's really inexpensive, and I think I bought it for like $40, something like that. It comes out of China, and it's one of those devices that makers like to use when they're building all kinds of tracking systems. So, for example, if you're building your own head-mounted display, you would definitely kind of use one of these devices. And the audio ease system is capable of working with these types of very inexpensive trackers. Now, the fact that the trackers are inexpensive is unfortunately not really helpful, because the system itself, the software itself, is expensive. So you're getting a cheaper head tracker for the cost of a more expensive system. But you know, kind of if you get it to work, it actually works quite well. One of the advantages of the 360 Pen Suite is that it technically allows higher order ambisonics. Now, unfortunately, when I played around with it, I was never able to really get that to work properly. It would not calibrate correctly, and if I got it calibrated, it would drift, which is you know, drifting is a technical thing that sometimes these trackers do. If you know, kind of it sort of drifts away without you actually moving, so it would change the head direction without me actually changing the head position, and that was very unfortunate, because I would really have preferred to monitor in higher order ambisonics. But I might actually pick that up again. I might give it another try. The last time I tried this was on a Mac system with Pro Tools. Maybe I should give it another try in Nuendo, another DAW on Windows, and maybe it works then. And if I get successful using that, I'll definitely post a video about that. So to answer your question, Samson, no, I'm not sponsored by Waves, and the reason I use Waves NX is simply because it is the most consumer-friendly and, quite frankly, the only really usable possibility to have a low-cost tracking system that you can use for fully immersive audio monitoring. The second question comes from Fit Al Basro. I hope I pronounced you correctly. Great video. Thank you for that. Well, thank you for liking my video. It would be awesome if you could do a video about the best ways to achieve depth, volume change, Doppler effects with objects. Now, that's actually a really interesting question, and I'm definitely going to pick that up in future videos. The reason I want to address it in this particular video here is because it also addresses one issue that we rarely talk about or rarely think about. We have talked about ambisonics and Dolby Atmos in the sense that it allows us to move objects in three-dimensional space and therefore get a fully realistic impression of how sounds are, you know, kind of distributed in the soundscape around us. But the reality is that this is not completely correct. We can only position the object. So the only thing that we actually hear is the position of the object. We do not hear certain effects that are either a result of certain physics or certain psychoacoustics. So if we add physics effects, so for example, like the Doppler effect, you know, for those of you that have never heard of the Doppler effect, I'm not quite sure if anybody is out there who has never heard about that, but that's sort of the effect that happens if an object approaches you, the pitch will be higher, and if the object kind of it goes away from you, it essentially have a lower pitch. That Doppler effect is not recreated when we're moving objects around in 3D space. And the easiest way to see that is if you think about a regular stereo field, as you're mixing in stereo and you have an instrument that's panned hard to the left, and then you create an automation that moves the instrument from the hard left to the hard right. Very, very quickly, you will hear how the instrument is moving from one side to the other in your stereo field, but the pitch is not going to change. And the reason the pitch is not going to change is simply because the audio renders only according to the current time that position is taken by that object. The Doppler effect is a result of the speed or the velocity the object has, and the velocity is not taken into account when the audio is rendered. So if you want to recreate Doppler effects or other physics effects or other psychoacoustic effects, you have to simulate that, because the systems that we use currently cannot recreate those. Well, that's actually not completely true. Dolby Atmos technically could recreate it, because Dolby Atmos has the full path information of this object stored as metadata in the file. So the Dolby Atmos system actually has the information about the speed of those objects. So if you have a very, very advanced Dolby Atmos system, it is conceivable that it is implemented in such a way that it would add a Doppler effect to an object. But to my knowledge, that is not done yet. And it would also be a little bit problematic because most professionals will need to recreate Doppler effect or other physics effects by baking them into the audio. And so if you have a system that in addition kind of adds the effect natively, so to speak, you would actually double that effect, and that might be detrimental. So my feeling is that Dolby Atmos will never really fully take advantage of that metadata that they have in the audio file, at least not in its current version or in its current form. Maybe sometime in the future. And until then, we need to fake these effects. And the way these effects are faked is through all kinds of plugins. And there is a whole host of companies who develop tools that allow you to do Doppler effects, distance effects, reverb effects, all kinds of psychoacoustic effects. And those need to be baked into the three-dimensional sound environment. So unfortunately, moving sound objects in 3D space is not enough. We also need to take care of certain acoustic effects that are either a result of physics or a result of psychoacoustics. And that's an interesting topic by itself that will probably lead to a number of videos in the future. So stay tuned. I'll plan to answer many of those questions in the future. The third question comes from Shelley Moreira. Shelley writes, "Thanks, Michael." Well, thank you. "I'm monitoring through DVR monitor with 7.1.4 input selected, inserted straight in 7.1.4 bus, and that bus feeding a stereo bus. No ambisonics bus involved. Is that okay? I don't like the way the MB decoder plugin sounds." Now, it's sort of true that the MB decoder plugin can sound a little lifeless. I'm not quite sure if that is a result of the actual conversion or if it's just a result of the fact that the gain is reduced quite a bit. So if you're using the MB decoder plugin that comes with Nuendo, you will actually kind of get a significantly reduced gain. And as we all know, that if things are louder, they sound better to us. But there is also some possibility that actually the conversion doesn't really work particularly well. And that's also one of the reasons why I said that it is always a good idea to use the decoder that is included in the Dolby Atmos renderer. And do the down conversion in the renderer instead of doing it in Nuendo. However, and that's where the problem comes in, the Dolby Atmos renderer does not really allow us to monitor different head positions. So essentially we have one fixed head position, which is lined up with the bed that we're using in the Dolby Atmos environment. And we can't really kind of move that head around. So we have no real way of monitoring how the objects are positioned in three-dimensional space, if everything is okay, if the drums are actually correct, if I put them there, or if I should put them out somewhere else. So we can't really do that. And in essence, there is no right way to do that. There are many different ways to do that, and whatever floats your boat is perfectly fine. So if you found a way that works for your workflow, there's nothing absolutely wrong with it. Once again, no imperfect way to do that. And I do think that the DVR system is actually fairly nice system, and the DVR monitor is also a really, really nice plugin to deal with. Now, for those of you who don't know DVR, it's a company that produces plugins related to the monitoring of three-dimensional objects, monitoring and mixing actually of three-dimensional objects in a soundscape. And they have a number of different tools available, and I'm actually going to talk about them in some of the future videos. There are a couple of really interesting things. It's the only company that developed a system that allows you to truly mix in a three-dimensional environment with using a head-mounted display and then kind of moving sound positions around and kind of mixing it that way. And one of the plugins that they provide is the DVR monitor. And the DVR monitor is really meant to be a monitoring plugin that allows you to essentially monitor any form of immersive sound. And in addition to that, they also allow to mimic or to simulate a particular listening environment. So if you want to know how your ambisonics production sounds in a church, you can actually do that with this plugin. Now the plugin is really nice, and if it's something that fits your workflow, then there's once again absolutely nothing wrong with using it that way. The one thing that's a little bit of a disadvantage is that the DVR monitor plugin only allows the positioning the head or only rotating the head. I didn't see a possibility to actually kind of move in all three directions, so I kind of change yaw, pitch and roll. I'm only going to be able to actually kind of move around, which might be perfectly fine for a music production, so it's probably kind of good enough for most of the things that you're doing. And in addition to that, it is also not inexpensive. Well, it's not terribly expensive, but it does cost money, let's put it that way. But your question actually made me think about something that I haven't thought before, and for that I would like to go back to the little production that we had last time when I picked it up. So this is, if you remember, this is the track. Once again, not really a track. I wouldn't call it a track. It's sort of two loops put into something that could become a track. And it's just for demonstration purposes. So we have a drum loop and a bass loop, and the drum loop serves as the bed, and the bass loop serves as an object. Let me just see if everything works. We set it up with the Dolby Atmos renderer in a 7.1.4 bus, and we are feeding these two into the Dolby Atmos renderer, and the Dolby Atmos renderer is down converting it or down mixing it to a binaural mix, and then feeding it into the stereo out. And if you remember, that's sort of the way it sounded. So nothing particularly. These are, by the way, these are both mono loops, so it's once again just for demonstration purposes. Now, if you're interested in how we did that, I put a link to that video in the description below, and you can check out how we did that. Now, the problem that we're running into is that we cannot really monitor that mix correctly in a fully immersive way, because we cannot change the head position. Regardless of how I move around, I will always hear the same down mix, and the down mix is with respect to the stereo setup that is related to the coordinate system that comes with the bed of the Dolby Atmos environment. So whatever we define here is in the bed, in the first 10 channels of the Dolby Atmos setup, will define the direction in which I look, and this will define the down mix that I'm having here. And this might not be enough for us. We might want to be able to really fully monitor immersively. And the way we did that is by using the control room feature in Nuendo. So I'm not going to recreate it here. Once again, you can look up that video. The way we did it, we essentially added an ambisonics bus to the control room, and then fed the Dolby Atmos bus into the ambisonics bus, and the control room then gave us a control that allowed to position the head with respect to the Dolby Atmos and sound environment. Now, your comment, and thank you for that actually, because I didn't think of that, made me think about different options that we actually have. And that option is by utilizing the plugins that DVR provides. And DVR has one plugin in particular that is free, that is the Dolby that is the DVR micro monitor, let's put it that way. And that actually allows us to use the DVR algorithms to monitor that Dolby Atmos track in exactly the way we would like. And so I just would like to show you how that works, so that you have an alternate way of doing that, and in a way that uses the DVR system, but that also allows a full immersive experience where I can move the head in any way, shape or form you like. Now, the way we're going to do that is we're going to add an additional ambisonics bus, so we cannot get around the ambisonics bus. So let me just add a third order ambisonics bus that is routed to the stereo out. And let me just rename that ambisonics bus, and let's just clean that up a little, and let's move that to the left and next to the Atmos bus. And we're going to route the Atmos bus into the ambisonics. So we're going to take the Atmos bus and route it into the ambisonics bus. Now this will essentially convert the Atmos signal, so the 7.1.4 signal, into a third order ambisonic signal. Now, if you're concerned about the degradation of the signal at that point, there's not really any need to do that, to be concerned. The third order ambisonics actually has a resolution that is high enough, and you will probably not hear any difference between the audio that comes from the 7.1.4 and the audio that comes from the third order ambisonics. The main difference is really in the decoding. So depending on the decoder that you're using, you will have different quality of your listening experiences in a binaural way. And as you pointed out, in the native included MB decoder that comes with Nuendo, might not sound as good, but once again, I don't think that's really a problem with the decoder. It's really a problem with the gain. But kind of whatever, we can certainly change it. So let me just check if that's working. So what we now have, we have the Atmos signal, the Atmos bed and the Atmos object are routed into the Dolby Atmos renderer that sits on the 7.1.4 Atmos bus. The Atmos bus is then routed into the ambisonics bus, which is a third order ambisonics bus. And the third order ambisonics is then routed into the stereo out. So if I'm now playing that audio file, I should actually hear everything the way it's supposed to be. And as you can already hear, the gain is significantly lower. So I'm changing the volume a little so that we can hear it a little better. And this also gives me options to change the head. So I can actually change the head position here, yaw, pitch and roll. So I'm not restricted to only my horizontal head position like in the DVR monitor system. I can change all three. And that would be one additional option to do that. However, we can do one more thing. Instead of the Instead of the ambisonics, the MB decoder, we can actually use a different decoder. One decoder that I found works really, really well is the DVR Ambi micro decoder. And that is actually a free decoder, so you can download and install that. And if we change the decoder, we now get the decoder settings here. And there are a couple of things that we want to make sure that we are doing. The first thing is we want to make sure that the input format is correctly. So what we are having here is really 7.1.4 converted into third order ambisonics. So we are going to change that into 16-channel third order ambisonics. And then let's hear how that decoder sounds. And as you can hear, sort of you're getting a better impression, but once again, my feeling is that's just because of the loudness. What is in any shape or form correct is that the decoder that comes with DVR, the DVR MB micro decoder, is much closer to the impression that you're getting from the Dolby Atmos decoder. So it might actually make sense to use the DVR MB micro system instead of the control room feature to monitor that, because what you're hearing is actually closer to what the Dolby renderer is producing. And similar to the included Atmos MB decoder, we can change the yaw, pitch and roll and move our head position that way. So this is another way to monitor. This is another way to monitor Dolby Atmos in Nuendo, by using a third-party decoder, in this particular case the DVR Ambi micro decoder, which I think has an exceptional quality, and you can use that one instead of the included one. But once again, there is no real right or wrong way. There are just different ways, and I would simply suggest that you play around with all the different possibilities that you have, and then settle on a particular workflow that you find most appealing, that works for you particularly, and that you feel comfortable with. Because in the end, we want to have fun, and even if it's for professional work, we want to have fun. And if we have a system that does not produce quality of an audio quality that we like and we enjoy, then we will most likely not be as productive or as creative as we could be if we have a system that really fits our workflow style and our what we actually like to hear. Okay, this brings me to the last question that I'm going to address today, and that comes from Sheriff Vlogs. And he comments that DaVinci Resolve Fairlight supports Dolby Atmos. And that is actually, I really thank you for that comment, because I didn't really think about that. That is actually true. You know, kind of Dolby Atmos, as would be expected, is particularly important for movie or video production. So it is expected that most tools that are for video editing have some sort of Dolby Atmos support. And DaVinci Resolve is through Fairlight, which is the audio part of DaVinci Resolve, does have a native Dolby Atmos renderer included. Now, it is not the Dolby Atmos renderer that comes from Dolby. It's their own implementation from what I can see. So it looks slightly different, and I have not yet tested it if it sounds in any way, shape, or form different. But the workflow should be fairly the same. Now, technically, Fairlight is not a digital audio workstation. It is sort of the audio production environment in a video editing environment. And therefore, it's not necessarily something that people think about when they think about Dolby Atmos music production. But I do know a number of people who switched to Fairlight as their primary digital audio workstation. So it can certainly do everything that we need from a DAW. I have honestly not looked at that yet, so I might make a video in the future. The obvious advantage is that DaVinci Resolve is free, so essentially get a full Dolby Atmos production environment for free, as long as you're okay with producing your music within a video editing system. But that's attractive enough for me to actually look at that in a little bit more detail, and I really thank you for that comment, because I honestly did not think about that, even though it is fairly obvious. Thanks. So these were the questions I wanted to answer today. If you liked that video, let me know. I can certainly make more of those. And other than that, over the next couple of weeks, I will shift my focus slightly. The reason for that is that I'm teaching a class on game audio over the summer, and I'm going to use that as a starting point to create a series on how to create game audio, starting from the very beginning. So if you've never done anything with games, or if you've never done anything with a game engine, you can follow along. And I plan to do that over the next couple of weeks, starting from zero to a point where you can actually kind of create game audio in a game system, or at least can work with game developers to add game audio to their games. And that's what I'm planning on doing over the next couple of weeks. Other than that, if you have any questions, drop me a note, make a comment in the comment section. If you like that video, push the like button. I'm not quite sure if YouTube disabled the dislike button. I think they are starting to roll out a version of YouTube where you don't have a dislike button anymore. If you see a dislike button, feel free to press it twice. Otherwise, subscribe, do all the things that people do on YouTube, and I see you at the next video.